This podcast contains descriptions of violence against children and adult language and is not suitable for all audiences. Listener discretion is advised. Hi, everyone, and welcome to Suffer the Little Children, the podcast giving voices back to the victims of child abuse murder and their families. I'm your host, Lane, and this is episode 191, Raylee Browning, Retold, Part 4. Over the last 3 episodes, I've told you the story of 8-year-old Raylee Browning, a little girl who died from abusive, neglectful, callous treatment in the home of her father, his girlfriend, and the woman's sister. This has been the most comprehensive telling to date of Raylee's story, with details you haven't heard anywhere else. In this episode, you'll hear my conversation with Janice Wriston, Raylee's only mommy, who fought tooth and nail for Raylee and begged various government agencies for help that never came. Janice has been to hell and back since meeting Marty Browning Jr. in 2008. Now, 6 years after her daughter was cruelly ripped away, Janice is finally ready to tell the world her truth and Raylee's. This is the conclusion of the harrowing story of Raylee Browning, Retold. This episode is longer than most of mine, and this is the edited version. For this recording, Janice and I talked for over 4 hours, and we could have kept going if it wasn't already past midnight. I'm blessed to call this wonderful human being a friend, and honored to give her a platform to speak her truth at last. You'll hear our conversation in a minute, but first, if you heard the first 3 episodes of Raylee's story, you already know about the little green mental performance shot I love so much. I've been using Magic Mind for several months now, and it's been a huge help in keeping me on track and focused when I need to be. You can buy it a case at a time if you want, but I wanted to keep my productivity flowing, so I signed up for a subscription and I regret nothing. With a Magic Mind subscription, it gets delivered to your doorstep or mailbox every month with free shipping. As an introvert, I love that I never have to leave the house to get it. The cases come in 2 sizes, 15 bottles so you can use one every couple of days, and 30 bottles for productivity fiends like me who like to take one every day. If you try Magic Mind and you don't love it, they offer a 100% money-back guarantee on your first purchase, no questions asked. And they don't even expect you to return any bottles you didn't use. It's easy to cancel your subscription too, with just a click in your online account or even a text message. Although, I can't imagine why you'd want to once you feel the benefits. Now's the time to give it a try. You'll get up to 48% off regular price with my special link, magicmind.com/lane20, and use my code LANE20. That's MAGICMIND.com and code LAINE20. Send me a message if you try it and love it. Now, here's my conversation with Raylee's mom, Janice, who I think you'll agree is the reason Raylee was such a sweet, kind, bright, tender little girl. This conversation ran the gamut of emotions, from heartbreaking to heartwarming to inspiring, and I know you'll all love Janice as much as I do. One second, let me just get my brain together here.
That's what I've been trying to do too. I was like, I need to get back into the Raylee vibe because due to the health, my kids, my husband, everything, I had to find a way to separate my life into 2 different aspects.
Right, you'd have to.
I don't know how the others do it. I don't know how they do it.
They might have to do the same thing.
There's the me that fights for Raylee's law, bringing her voice out, being her voice, giving all the attention and everything that I can, pouring into justice for Raylee on the page and keeping people into it, into the story, and listen to what she went through. It's so preventable. Like, this child disappears off the face of the earth. The school can't find her. Her mother can't find her. Everyone's going to CPS screaming about this family. Even neighbors, everyone that's around is saying, you know, there's something going on here. And There's me that's going to the school like, hey, I'm looking for my daughter. And they're like, your daughter? Well, she hasn't been here since 2016. And it's, what? That was around December. And I broke down on Jeremy. I'm like, what do we do? And he said, screw Judge England. We're going back to court. I don't care if he said you can't come in. You're going back because it's the only way we're going to find her.
That guy, man, I hope he doesn't sleep well any night.
I hope not. And his hope. Talking about, I can't say nothing about him because defamation of character. No, what I'm saying that he said is true. And it did happen. And it's awful suspicious. After she died, her records from the court are just gone. Every hearing, all of it, gone.
I think I even said in the episode, they have to hold her for a certain amount of time. And if they're going to get rid of it, it has to be for a good reason. And
Jeremy's final divorce hearing was like the beginning of 2012.
Mm-hmm.
They still have it.
Huh, yeah.
Now, my last hearing with that courthouse was in 2016.
Mm-hmm.
And they're saying it's gone. They knew Raylee by name. They knew who she was.
Mm-hmm.
They knew the situation. They knew how serious this was.
I seriously hope that it haunts them, every one of those people, every single day.
So many times she just could have been saved.
Yes.
I mean, I just don't understand why women's resources, as many times as I went to them, why could women's resources not step up?
Yeah.
And there are two ladies that works with Uplifting Families who did try to get the attention of the DHHR, because the entire time that I've dealt with Uplifting Families, which is a branch off of CPS, I had to deal with them a lot. And, I liked them and I trusted them, and they would speak on my behalf to CPS. Like, she's looking for her daughter and nobody knows where her daughter is. They tried, and CPS just didn't. I would go in there, I would speak to a CPS representative, and they would say, well, let me get the supervisor. And supervisor might, come in 15 minutes later and pretty much just shut me down. They would come in there and they would say simple things like, apparently you've already called, so this is already under investigation. There's nothing else I can tell you or any information. And I'm like, well, did you go to the home? Well, I can't tell you about that. I said, well, did you see her? Is she okay? Well, we're not allowed to speak about that on the people who's calling on behalf. I'm like, I'm her mother.
Right.
I want to know if she's okay. But I got so sick and tired of being looked at as the crazy ex who is trying to interfere in his life. And that was the vibe I got from women's resources and CPS. And CPS, whenever they sent me to the police, they didn't say city or state. So I went to the city police first. And it was the city police that sent me to the state police. And I went in there and I talked to them and said, Raylee has told me all these things that's going on. She's getting locked in a closet. She said that there's a bucket catching water. She said that the floors are hard and they're cold. She's telling me all these details. And she's little at this point. She's probably about 4 years old. And all these things that she brings to my attention. Mom, they're making me call Julie mommy. And I don't want to, because Julie's not my mommy. But if I don't, they smack me in my mouth. I was so mad. I took that to Cherie and I said, are you hitting her? And she said, no. Did she say that I'm hitting her?
I bet she got in more trouble then after that. That's the problem.
Yes. Raylee was just so developed. I think we talked about this before, how she had like an old soul to her. She was ahead of herself with everything whenever it came to crawling or walking. As you said before, she never did crawl.
Yeah.
No. She had her little toes and her hands and spider walk, like you said.
Yes.
And I always told her, you look like a little monkey. Come here. And it wasn't long that she pulled herself up on the island on the side of it and took like 3 steps to me. And she was so young, and God, she was just so smart.
Yes.
I mean, at 4 years old, I have that picture saved. It was in our baby book of her writing her name for the first time. Perfect. That is at 4 years old. She was something.
She had a lot to cram into 8 years, so she did.
When I close my eyes and think about her, I think about all the time that I had with her. She would crawl up on my lap, and I swear her hair would always smell like sunshine on morning dew or honeysuckles. It just had this bright, sweet smell, and she would hug me so tight. And I can remember just hugging her and holding her, and she stayed on my lap a lot. There didn't have to be a movie on or anything going on. She would just get up there and she would just stay, and I could just rest my head on top of her little head, and I can still feel the feeling of my cheek on top of her head and how many times she fell asleep right on my shoulder.
She was a mama's girl for sure.
Yes, she was. She was. It was awful because of the pickups. This was horrible. She got to a point to where she knew this is the pickup, and she would get so scared. She would take her seatbelt off, and you could just feel the anxiety.
Yeah.
And she'd come up and crawl into the front seat, and she would get on my lap and just squeeze me. And, Mom, are you coming Friday? Mom, will you be there Friday, Mom? I'll see you Friday, right? Right, Mom? We started showing up to the pickup spot about 10 or 15 minutes early. I would stop by the McDonald's right there, get her something to eat, and she would crawl up and sit on my lap, and I would talk to her. And as soon as they would pull in, she would tense up. And it's like she didn't even care that they were next to us. She would just cling on that much tighter. Cherie would roll her eyes in the back of her head. But like I said, every single time, if Raylee had a mark, bruise, bug bites, saying the things like, I have to call Julie mommy, all of the things that she told me and brought to my attention, I always made sure, my daughter better not come back over saying those things about you guys. I will see him back in court again if it keeps going on. And I don't want to see her with any bruises, marks, scratches, anything. And Cherie would blow it off like, oh, well, she was just playing outside. And, the dogs are big and they're rough and they knock her over. And, she gets down on the floor and she's playing with them. And there was a scratch from all the way from her chin up to her ear. And I was furious. What is this? Well, one of the dog cages, she got too close to it and the dog came running out of it and it scratched her up the side of the face. They always had an excuse for everything. But then there came a point, when Raylee was about 5, she started shutting down whenever I would ask her how her week was at her dad's.
Yeah, because she had it instilled in her that as soon as she comes back, of course she's not going to say anything. She's scared out of her mind.
I feel the guilt for the punishment that she would get.
Well, you didn't know that.
Because I would approach them and I would push the facts of, if you do this to her, just putting my foot down, basically. I'm not allowing you to do this.
Right.
This is not going to happen, and it's not okay by any means. And she is not to call Julie mommy if she doesn't want to. And Cherie said, she doesn't call Julie mommy. She calls Julie Julie. She doesn't call her mommy.
Oh, she made that up just to what?
Right. Yeah. She's just making it up. Anytime that they would get CPS called on them, they automatically assumed it was us. So they would always call CPS back, and we'd always have CPS at the house, like, hello again.
Just retaliatory. Exactly what people are worried about happening with the homeschooling bill.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a frustrating fact. They're like, oh, what if somebody calls CPS just because they're mad at me? The times they called CPS on us was just out of this world. Like every time the school would call, they would think it was us. And I found out later that the same complaints that was laid on us through CPS, they also called the family of 2 of the other surviving children.
Mm-hmm.
They would call CPS on the father and have the exact same story as what was called on Raylee. So I guess so they could keep their story straight. They would just tell them the same story.
I'm glad they're not as clever as they thought they were.
Yeah. Like after they were arrested and Marty having the nerve to go speak to a coworker, not about how he was broken down about his daughter, not about how this is mentally and physically killing him or bothering him. No, he spoke about how he would get out of this, how the state had no evidence.
That was his worry, yeah.
That was his worry about him going to jail, which psychopath.
Yep. They honestly think that they're not guilty. They honestly think they didn't do anything wrong. It's ridiculous.
They beat it in their own minds that they didn't do anything wrong.
Yep. It's crazy.
Like the week that Raylee died, I heard that Julie had went to a doctor's appointment because she had a cold. Are you serious?
Disgusting.
It's disgusting. Very. They had beaten Raylee to a point to where they knew they couldn't take her to a hospital. They knew they would be questioned because she was covered in bruises, knots, scabs, scratches, scars. She was a mess.
Yeah.
By the time her body had had enough.
Right. And even if some of those bruises were, like they were trying to say, caused by the pneumonia, even if, she still had tons of other stuff that wasn't.
There was somebody from Hylon Funeral Home who said that all those bruises probably came from the trip to Charleston, the medical.
Yeah. It was the EMTs. It was the CPR. It was.
Yeah, that's basically what they were trying to say.
I know that stuff can injure them, but
there's a difference. If your blood is flowing, somebody hits you and you have a monster bruise, that's because all the blood is flowing straight to that spot. But if you are already past, you're not going to bruise. And I told him that, and he just looked at me like, oh, I didn't know that.
Can't fathom that. Oh, so you mean these people were beating her up?
Right. Like Hylon Funeral Home, they wanted so bad to do the service for Julie and Marty. I was just in shock. Like, these people really want to do this. It was mind-blowing.
I'll pause here for a quick sponsor break. I can only imagine the grieving parents that they were when they went in there.
Right. I was in shock.
Like,
I can't even remember my feet moving to take steps. I felt like Jeremy had carried me, and you just feel like all of your blood is just gathered somewhere else in your body, maybe to your core. My hands were numb. My face was numb. And I can remember hearing Julie's voice in the lobby saying, I need to see my daughter. I haven't seen my daughter for 14 days. Is that someone else? Who is this? That was exactly what went through my head. Hearing that, all I heard was the voice. When it comes down to it, whenever Marty got with Julie, I was hoping and praying that Julie was this good person who could maybe turn Marty into a good person too.
Yeah.
They say sometimes a good woman can make a good man.
Yes.
Good man can make a good woman. I mean, I've heard that before. And I was thinking that, maybe if Julie was a good person and a positive vibe, maybe she could have made Marty this good person and lift him up and push him to strive to be better in life. And that's what I hoped for in the beginning, which I guess they probably had a rocky start, considering that he tried everything to get back with me.
Oh, he never told her that, I guarantee it.
Oh, she probably never knew.
Nope. And I can't wait until she hears the podcast.
Surprise. Like, the whole beginning of dating her, she was a backup.
Yep. Plan B.
Yes, she was his plan B. And I had taken these steps in my life to where I decided I wanted to be honest with myself as a person. I wasn't looking for a relationship because I wasn't sure how to build a relationship, because one, I'd never actually loved another man. The only love that I had ever known in my life was my kids. That's a certain love, but As for companionship love, I'd never felt it. So I wasn't looking for it. And yeah, I remember breaking it down to Marty, like, I'm sorry, I don't feel love for you. I'm not in love with you.
And it is your fault, sir.
Yeah, I love Raylee. That's the only reason I'm here is I love her. And, he tried everything. He tried to act like he was this good person whenever we first got together. Like, you're not going to fool me like that because I had seen the worst of you.
Yeah.
You have tried to cram me into an oven. You have beat me so bad in the back of my head. You have hit me so many times in the eye that I have scar tissue behind the right eye, meaning he's left-handed, and he punched me that many times. He had left so many marks around my neck. That's not love. You don't grab somebody by their hair and drag them into the house because they're outside screaming for help because they had just got beaten.
No, he wanted to control you. That's what he loved.
Yeah, and he was same height as me, maybe an inch taller, and he was real stout and always proud about how strong he was. Yes, he was strong. He could pick me up, throw me into the wall, and
wow, what a great talent.
Like I said, he cramming me in the oven. I'll never forget him bending me over backwards over the kitchen sink trying to waterboard me. That was the worst. There was water going up my nose and I couldn't breathe. I was pregnant with Raylee at that time.
And who saved you from that? That was one of his friends.
Steve saved me from most of them. But if Bill or John was there, now these are the strangers.
Yes, strange men, very strange.
Yeah, the strangers, which one of them he got a felony with years earlier, like 3 years prior. They had robbed a coal mine or something. I don't know what they did.
But it wasn't violence.
No, it wasn't violence. And that was Bill. He was a single guy who really didn't care about much. But to see a woman getting beaten, he wasn't going to have that. Bill was not going to have Marty putting his hands on me. He wasn't going to let it happen. And Bill was tall and stocky, strong himself. And as soon as Bill would come at him, Marty would back down like a little girl.
Probably cry a little, yeah.
Crying is exactly right. Oh my gosh, Bill, did you see what she did to me?
God.
Did you hear what she said?
Oh, she's so awful. It's her fault somehow, for sure.
Yeah, Bill would be like, man, if you put your hands on her like that again. Steve told him that. Bill told him that. John told him that. All three of them, his friends, would tell him, stop hurting her.
It's incredible. How in the hell did the judge think this is fine and you're not allowed to come in anymore? You're not allowed to complain about his violence, even though you lived it and you had a bazillion witnesses.
The judge told me, he said, how many DVPs did you get on Mr. Browning? I said, I didn't even have a phone to get to.
Yeah.
And he said, okay, well, did you try to run to a neighbor's house?
He's a family court judge, and he's not going to understand about how hard it is to leave an abusive relationship.
Right.
Oh.
It didn't matter what I told him. Marty had abused me mentally, physically, sexually. I could run from him, and he was going to drag me back.
Yep.
I can't tell you how many times I did try to leave him.
And he threatened to kill you a lot.
Well, threatening to kill me was one thing, but whenever he said that he was going to kill me and Raylee,
yeah,
it became a whole different level of fear. You know, I remember you mentioning in the previous recording, and I thought back that the time whenever I was pregnant and he threw me down on the floor. And this is the one time I got it in good on him. That I had taken the abuse for so long.
Mm-hmm.
I remember reaching my arm out where the table had knocked over, and there was one of those really big ashtrays, really thick glass.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. And I thought, I'm going to run. So I remember picking that up and swinging it. I don't even know where I hit him at, but it knocked him down for a second. And I remember running outside, getting right to the porch. I remember holding onto the banisters and screaming out for someone to help me. I was probably 8 months pregnant. He dragged me back inside, threw me on the floor, kicked me in the face, kicked out my eye tooth, remembering just the sound, the crunch, the boot, the blood. It's a lot. I went to the hospital over that because I told him I think I broke my face. And I remember sitting at the hospital and the ER doctor saying, "Do you want me to call the police?" And I wish with everything in me that I would have. He knew what had happened.
Of course, yeah.
All I could think is I can't, because if I do, he will kill me.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to be 9 months pregnant and he's going to kill me. I can't get the police in here because eventually, after he goes to jail, he will get out. And there's no restraining order that's going to hold him back from coming after me. I can remember vividly, as you were saying that on the podcast, I can remember like every step of what happened that day and how it happened and how I did have an opportunity to get police involved and I didn't take it.
It's not your fault. And I know it's impossible not to blame yourself after the fact. I totally get that. But hearing from the outside and also having been in nothing as violent as that, but psychologically, yes, I understand. It's very scary and very hard. And you had the additional issue that you really believed that he would kill you.
Absolutely. I still do. I'm scared for whenever they get out. What if him and Julie decide they want to do something worse? I don't know their frame of thinking. I don't understand it.
I'm just so cynical about everything that they say, do, spend money on, whatever, because they proved themselves so many times to just be terrible people.
Monsters. I have never seen nothing like this.
Every picture I've seen of Cherie, her eyes are just terrifying.
That's what the surviving child said as well.
Yeah.
That she was a monster and she will never forgive her.
Good.
And she does not want her back in her life.
Okay.
And the surviving child actually at drop-offs wasn't allowed to look my way, wasn't allowed to speak to me.
You can't exist because Raylee has a mom already.
This specific child wasn't even allowed to acknowledge me. She was so pretty. Like, I would just see her when I picked up Raylee and she'd be in the front seat. And I'd say, hi, I'm Raylee's mom. And she wasn't allowed to look my way. And then Cherie said, she's got some problems with speaking to people, strangers sometimes. And
excuses for everything.
Always excuses. And I tell you this, at the courthouse, after she had testified and after everything, I believe it was during sentencing, I had seen her a few times and all I could think is, I want to hug her. I was standing at the bottom of the stairs and she came out and she walked down. She looked at me and she said, I know you're Raylee's mom. You look just like Raylee. And Raylee looked just like you. Can I hug you? And she hugged me and she squeezed me and she said, she laid her head on my shoulder and she said, I feel like I'm hugging Raylee. And I had a chill go through me because I said the same thing. I feel like I'm hugging Raylee. And it felt like she was just there in that moment when we embraced.
I think she was.
I believe that 100% she was there in that moment.
Yeah.
But no, there was nothing wrong with that child. She is beautiful. She's smart. There was nothing wrong with her, nothing of what Cherie had said. And the other children, the same. I try to think of the positive of the aftermath. And I think about Raylee dying gave these 3 children a chance to live a normal life.
And have relationships with their fathers if they wanted it.
Right. They were not allowed to have normal lives. There's so much they weren't allowed to do. And all they were taught at the time of being in that house is to lie and avoiding people. It's a shame because one of the surviving children looks like she's just blossomed. I just want to reach into a picture and just hug her. Mm-hmm. Actually, her and her brother. I just want to grab them and hug them both.
They're all just so innocent. They had nothing to do with it, and they were just doing what they were told. Anything that they did or anything they lied about, it's not like they wanted to. There was a culture of fear in that house.
Yes. And I just try to see through the aftermath of what can come from this. And it gave 3 innocent children a chance to live a normal life. Rayleigh's Law, delicate, foolhardy, pushing with all his heart on Rayleigh's Law, and it can save so many lives.
Yes.
And I love that delicate, foolhardy took that picture of Rayleigh.
Yes.
And the passion in his voice. Mm-hmm. Rayleigh has touched him, and he has felt her spirit, and he has felt the innocence that was stolen.
That's why I had to play the whole thing. I think it was 3 or 4 minutes, but he really did a great job. And that's just one time he's gone to bat. He has done that how many times since 2019?
Yes, he has. And he's done it nonstop, and he hasn't given up, and he keeps going with it. And it's like they keep on pushing him back and shutting him down and trying to just make him go away. And he doesn't go away. He comes back, and he comes back stronger. Carrie Ciliberti being a speaker for that as well. She pushes hard for that.
She's an angel on earth, I think.
Yes.
She has my undying respect, that woman.
Yes, mine as well.
If you see her again, please give her a hug for me. I honestly.
Absolutely.
Her testimony just had me tied in knots. And it wasn't even video. It was just what I was reading. But I could hear her saying these things. She felt so strongly about your baby.
Yes, she did. And I thought about, and this is in 2014. So Rayleigh was 4. Rayleigh looked at the gym teacher, Ciliberti, and said, "My mommy's having another baby, which means she doesn't want me anymore. Can you be my mom?" And I thought, oh my gosh, what did they tell her?
Right.
While I was pregnant, did they tell her that whenever I had the baby that she would be discarded or something? Like, did they try to make Rayleigh believe that that was the end for her seeing her mommy if I had a child?
Time for another word from my sponsors.
And Miss Ciliberti, I could tell how close she was to my baby. I could see it. She loved her.
Yes.
And she said, "Janice, I didn't even know about you. But gosh, I loved your daughter. I didn't know the situation with you. I know that she would come back from weekends, and she would always be talking about what she did at mommy's house. Everything that she would do with her baby sister. She would always talk about her mommy." And then there for a little while that she had stopped, and she said, "I got worried. And I remember telling Anthony I wish that I could just take her in and adopt her." But I don't know if that was during the time period of Jace was in the hospital. I don't know what time period it was. I know that whenever Jace came home, I went September, October, and half of November without seeing her because they said that she was sick and throwing up and a high fever every single weekend. Till finally Jeremy was like, no, she's not sick every weekend. They are doing this to you, Janice. I was just crying so hard, just doubled over crying. I have to see my baby. I have to see her. And he said, "I'm going to go get her." Well, we did. We went and got her, and that she was just fine. She was so excited to come home.
You got a good one.
Yes, I do have a good one, and proud to say that I do know what soulmate is now. I did find mine, and it was built on honesty, and he was good to Rayleigh, and I'm happy that she loved him. And I'm happy that, he got to know her and she got to know him. And all my loves know each other. Rayleigh loved Miss Ciliberti. You always ask your children, what do you want to be whenever you grow up? As soon as they can talk, you want to see what their ideas are. Where are you leading? What do you want to do?
Yeah.
Rayleigh used to always say, "Well, I'm going to be just like you, Mom. I'm going to be just like you, Mom. I'm going to have a baby and I'm going to love her, and I'll have another baby, and then my other baby will get to hold that baby." And she would just ramble on and on and on. She was adorable. She was just free speaker and just so innocent. They had stolen so much from her. They beat her down to a point of she was just mute. If I would say anything about her dad, Julie, Cherie, their house, going over there, any other surviving children, anything like that, she would just shut down and put her head down, and she didn't want to talk anymore. Wow. A lot of people don't know this. When she was 5 years old, she spent nearly that entire summer with us. Oh my God, it was the best summer ever. Yeah. Because Raylee would be like, will you call Cherie and ask her if I can stay? And I would be like, yeah, I'll call her. And I'd be like, well, sure, she wants to stay. And, the other kids are here and I don't mind. And I would love for her to stay as long as she can. And Cherie would be like, yeah, sure, that's fine. And it was just amazing. Like, I could literally just call Cherie and Cherie's like, okay. Like, there was no, well, let me go ask her dad or let me ask Julie or see what they think. No. When she was 5, Cherie was allowed to say, yeah, you can keep her.
Well, she's the only one who probably did any of the caring for the kids. Well, I say caring very loosely.
Caring, yeah. I get it. Mentally training, I guess.
Yeah, warping.
Right. She spent that summer, and I think that was probably the best summer of her life. But it seemed as soon as she went back and as soon as school started, I believe that's whenever the femur was broken, I did go up and over the edge. I was mad. I was furious.
Yeah, because you weren't wrong.
I wanted a reason. Why is her femur broken? She kicked the wall. No, really, I want the reason. Why is her femur broken? She kicked the wall. Ask her. I don't care what she says.
Ask her.
She could tell me that she was walking and it broke. I'm not going to believe it. What happened? Marty was there. This is one of the very few times that Marty showed up. And that's the reason that Marty did show up, because this time Raylee had a broken bone and Cherie knew that I was going to say something and I wasn't going to hold back. Mm-hmm. So this was one of the times that Marty was actually there. He gets out and he has the paperwork. It's like she looks towards the vehicle. He gets out and he's like, here's the paperwork. And she did kick the wall and it was hard enough to break the femur. I said, I don't believe this. And they knew. I didn't believe it whenever I left. So the next CPS call in, of course, reflected back on me. Every time that they would be calling CPS on me, they weren't just punishing me.
Right.
They were punishing me, my husband, who has nothing to do with whatever their issues are. They don't know him. All they know is he's a good man.
That's probably why they wanted to punish him too.
That was probably enough to drive them crazy, was the fact that Janice is with a good man.
And yeah, at some point, they went from Raylee as more of a burden, and that's why she was allowed to stay with you whenever she wanted,
right,
to we need to punish Janice.
Right.
And that's when everything went downhill.
Well, they really wanted to punish me over the broken leg. Whenever her leg got better, they paid me back with the CPS coming to the house and the police bringing, the emergency protection order. And I'm like, well, what is it this time, Andy? And he's like, well, Janice, they're saying that Jeremy beat her with a belt. And I don't even, where do they come up with this? And at this point, I didn't believe none of it, that there is no belt. There's nothing. They're just saying this. So I went up to CPS and I talked to the CPS worker. I said, this is a lie. They are just trying to keep her from me because I got mad about the broken femur. And they're just trying to use this and say that my husband did it. And my husband wasn't even home over the weekend. So there's no way he could have done it. And as I'm talking, she's pulling out an iPad. She flips this iPad over to me. And I'm looking at these belt marks were so deep that she was cut and bleeding. And they were wide. After they beat her.
Cherie really lost control. And she knew they had to blame it on someone.
Yeah. They said that they didn't even see these marks because it wasn't even claimed that these belt marks happen until they get her ready to go to school on Monday, and I'm not sure if it was the teachers that recognized the belt marks. I think that's what it was. The teachers seen the belt marks because Raylee said her back was hurting. And so the teachers, of course, blame it on Marty and Shrew and them. And they're like, oh, we didn't even see him. Oh my gosh, what happened, Raylee? And Raylee was saying, Jeremy hit me 5 times with the belt for waking up the baby.
Like she was reciting it from a script.
Exactly. And then they asked again, well, what happened? Jeremy hit me 5 times on the back for waking the baby. Well, okay, so they asked my husband when they were questioning him at the police department, will you take a lie detector test? And he said, yes, I'll take a lie detector test. I'll do it whenever you want. And they're like, how's Wednesday? He's like, anytime you want. So they ended up calling the following Monday, and we both went in. I couldn't believe this. They called me back first. I got the lie detector test, and I didn't even know I had it coming.
Oh, wow.
And then, yeah. And they were asking me things like, did you see Jeremy hit Raylee with a belt? And I'm like, Jeremy wasn't even around her. I got her ready to go to the Halloween party with my mom. And when I got her ready and I put her dress on, I can assure you her back was as normal and perfect skin as can be. She was fine. I got her ready to go. That was on Saturday evening. I called her the next morning to talk to her about the party. And my mother is the one who took her back to the dropping off point. But see, Jeremy was the one who had went and picked her up. And whenever she got picked up that weekend, he went and picked her up, and they swung by Tom's and got ice cream before they came home. And she was just gig and happy, bubbly, giggly, excited to go to Nina's the next day. And she went to the dance. And then all of a sudden on Monday morning, there's these horrifying marks.
Like she got in trouble for enjoying herself.
Like a nightmare. And yes, in my mind, I thought, what if she went back and said, I got to go to the Halloween party and we had fun. Jeremy picked me up. We got to go get ice cream. And I mean, what if her stories were something like that? And then she got whipped, and then she got told that you better say this or you're getting whipped again. But they had no idea what had happened at our house that weekend. They had no idea that Jeremy wasn't around. They had no idea that Nina is the only one who's seen her from Saturday night until Sunday.
Right.
And then they didn't tell anybody. They just took her back in the room for questioning. And whenever they took her back in, she said, Jeremy hit me 5 times with the belt for waking the baby. And they said, okay, Raylee, we found out that you hadn't seen Jeremy that much that weekend, that you went to your Nina's house to go to a party, and there's pictures of you smiling. So you had a good time at the party, didn't you? And she, yes. How did Jeremy whip you with the belt? He climbed up the side of Nina's house into the window upstairs, whipped me 5 times for waking the baby. That was her next story. And then, I guess after Marty, Julie, and Sheree found out that took place, the story changed to Nina hit me 5 times with the belt.
Oh, my God.
Oh, they made her say Nina hit me 5 times with a purple belt. So they made her go to a color and then skip to my mother.
Yeah.
And she wouldn't say any other story. But after enough of the chaos, the judge was like, we're just going to drop this. This is completely insane. Mr. Wriston did not do this. Miss Wriston did not do this. We don't know where these belt marks came from. So we're just going to drop this.
Oh, my gosh.
And he dropped it. He just dropped it.
The fact is that someone beat this child with a belt, and we're going to just forget about it because we don't know who.
They asked Marty to take a lie detector test, and he said he couldn't because he had blood sugar problems.
Yeah, because that affects it for sure.
Exactly. That's why he wasn't Raylee's father, because he had blood sugar problems. Yeah, because I couldn't get pregnant.
Because of his diabetes, yes.
Right, yeah. And exactly like why he couldn't answer the questions during the interview after she had been killed.
Oh, he's diabetic.
My diabetes is getting to me. I'm going to have to go to the hospital. The police, whenever he did do that during the interview, they called every hospital locally and every clinic. And they called to see if Marty Browning had been in. And no, never went. But anyways, while all that happened, the judge just lets it go. About a couple weeks later, we meet at the drop-off. And Cherie says, oh my gosh, I didn't realize during this whole time about bout marks, I seen Raylee sitting on the porch. She was rocking in the rocking chair and smacking her back with the back of the rocking chair. And I bet you anything that that's where those stripes came from. No, I got to the point where I wouldn't even speak to Cherie anymore. I didn't want to talk to her. I was there for my daughter only. I'm not going to talk to you. I was mad. I was done with it. And there's no rocking chair that's going to leave diagonal belt slashes.
Right. And so she's bleeding.
Yes. These were all the way from the top of her shoulders down to her butt.
She really lost control that time. I don't think she did that very often. So something really pissed her off.
That should have been the end of it.
Yes.
That should have been the end of it. If you're going to viciously beat a child that bad, you should not have the child in your custody, especially whenever the other parent is screaming that they're going to end up killing her.
And it's not even her child.
I was fighting for custody. When she came to me February 2016, and she said, Mom, Daddy hurt my secret, my bottom. She had just got in the bath. I got her out, wrapped her up in a towel, and I called the clinic. It was a Friday, and the clinic closed at 5. I called ahead to the clinic, and it was 4:45. I said, I'm bringing my daughter here. And I don't know if you guys are crowded, but my daughter is saying that her father has her bottom, and I want to bring my daughter in to be checked. And they said, please, yes, go ahead, bring her. And when I brought her, they sent everybody out. They locked the doors until I pulled in. And I came in and I brought Raylee. And it was hard to even talk. All I could say is her dad hurt her bottom. And can you please tell me what happened? She's not talking a lot and telling me. She wouldn't tell me. I felt like I messed that up. She quit confiding in me because I took it back to them because I was so angry. And then she got punished for it.
But you were also trying to make it stop. She did not blame you for that. I'm sure of it. It's just that she learned her lesson about telling anyone.
She was tore at her 1 o'clock, 10 o'clock and 1 o'clock. Ripped. They called the police. The police came, did a report, took Raylee in a room and talked to her by herself. So there was a full report on what Raylee said and what I said and what the doctor had said. And Raylee was hungry and Jalen was screaming at this point. She was about a year and a half to both of them just wanted to go home. And the officer mentioned, I remember him saying, did you think maybe to take her to CAMC? And I thought, no. After what I just seen go on in there, and Raylee looking at me like she did, all the facts is in this paperwork. Everything is right here. And everything she told you happened. Everything that she told me that happened. And everything she told the doctor what happened. We have 3 statements here. That's enough. I'm not tormenting her. Especially after everything they did to her at the clinic. We were there for hours. And I came home and cried and got the emergency protective order. And actually, I'd never seen Raylee so relieved.
Because she didn't have to go back?
Because she didn't have to go back. Because when Sunday came, she said, do I have to go back? I said, if I can stop it, baby, you never have to go back.
Yeah.
Because that was my intentions and that was my plans. I didn't want her to ever go back around him after that. So after she'd been with us for a couple of weeks, she said, Mommy, I got to tell you something. And I said, what is it, baby? She said, I couldn't tell you at the time because Cherie and Julie and Dottie would have gotten mad. But Cherie is the one who beat me with the belt. It wasn't Dad, if that's what you thought. And it kind of made me think, I did think it was her dad. But how did she know that I thought it was him?
Right.
I tried my best not to talk about any of them around her because it hurt her and bothered her. I only talked about them if I necessarily had to talk to her about them, especially after her trust had become a little iffy. Those are the things that I get mad over. Right now with Rayleigh's younger siblings, Jalen, Jason, Jaden, they have no bruises on them, and they roughhouse around the house all the time.
Yeah.
I got these 2 young boys, 7 and 8. That's always pushing and shoving and give me that, and I want that. And Mom, they ain't covered in bruises. Between all 3 of them, there isn't a bruise on nobody. But Rayleigh would be covered. Just covered. And it never made sense to me. I say it didn't make sense to me, but yet it all made sense to me.
Now for another quick sponsor break.
I have to fight daily with the fact that I didn't get away from him sooner.
That's also not your fault.
I search through my mind and try to think what I could have done different. She was born with 2 protectors. 2. She had me. She had her father. These are the 2 that was to keep her living, breathing, and happy. This was the 2 people that was supposed to give her a life. And I felt like I failed because I couldn't protect her from him.
You tried. The problem was not you.
He was a monster.
The problem was the judge that you had and Marty himself. And then he brought in these other evil beings, let's call them that.
Really monsters.
Yeah, they were.
Like whenever I took Jason for heart surgery, and they found 2 hairline fractures from Jalen falling in the playpen on him. And I took him to the hospital, and they said that the time of these breaks looked to be in the last week, June into July. And I show them this video, and they're like, yeah, right there, you can see the way that he's breathing. I said his sister fell in the playpen on top of him. And the doctor was like, oh, okay. He said, there's child abuse cases where the kid's ribs are broken, but not like this. He said, this child doesn't have a bruise on him. He's not an abused child, but I do have to ask you to sign the papers to do the child abuse test. And I said, of course. And in this child abuse test, what they do is they check the brain to make sure that it's never been like shook or something. They check the eyes as well. They check inside their eyes to make sure there's never been any retinal detachments. This sounds awful.
I've heard it all. I know.
They ran Jace through all of these tests, and they said, if Jace is an abused child, we cannot perform the surgery. And I said, well, Jace is not an abused child, so I feel free and clear with you guys doing this test. So they did all of the testing, and I wanted to call to talk to Raylee because I was going to be delayed at the hospital. And I talked to her and said, baby, I'm not going to make it to you this Friday. Jace's heart surgery is going to be held up. She's like, what's wrong, Mom? What's wrong? And I'm like, well, found 2 fractures on his ribs. He was laying in his playpen and Jalen jumped in. And she's like, oh, no. And, just talking to her. And, yeah, I was on speakerphone. I just wasn't paying attention because in my world of believing that most people are good people is incorrect.
Yeah.
Not most people are good people. But they did the child abuse assessment on him, and he came back clean and clear. And the doctor told me, don't worry. You have 0 worries about anything because I cleared all of this up with the doctor who had his concerns with these breaks. And so these are hairline fractures, and they look like something from a very quick impact. Nothing like child abuse or shaken baby or anything like that. He said, your son's going to be okay. We're going to continue with the surgery. And they did the surgery. I was sitting there asleep with my hand reached in on top of his chest, just feeling his breathing. And a CPS worker comes in. She's like, I'm sorry, but you can't be here. What do you mean I can't be here? She said, are you here alone? I said, well, my mom's here. And she's like, your mom has to be in the room with you if you're going to be in here to see your son. And the nursing staff has already been made aware. And I'm like, what is going on? And, Jeremy traveled up that evening And I told her I'd be right back. And I left and I came back and she was gone. And I asked the lady who was there, I was like, where did she go? And she said, I don't know. She said she had what she had and she left. And then next thing I know, Jeremy's on his way up and he gets there and I tell him about the whole thing. And I'm like, this is just so weird. I don't even know why they were here. The doctor already cleared him for everything. And Jeremy was like, I don't know. We got the phone call that we were not allowed to be around our children. We had Jalen with us. And they're like, well, you need to leave the hospital or you will be escorted out. They took us into this room. I had only been there with him for like 1 day after his heart surgery. I collapsed. Jeremy held me up and I don't know how he did it.
Yeah, he's an amazing man.
I don't know how he does it because I couldn't hold it together, knowing that I couldn't be in the hospital with my child that just had open heart surgery.
Yeah.
And we stayed up there for 2 more days just so that we could get updates on how he was doing. I could call and ask for updates. And then they put a stop to that. We even told the CPS worker that we would be up there a couple more days. And she said, that's fine. Just bring Jalen when you're ready. So we had to come all the way 3-hour drive from Morgantown, knowing that this is the last drive we're taking with our little girl for the next few months. And they're telling us this whole time, this will be over in a couple of weeks. I called this doctor on our way back and I'm like, you said everything was fine and it's not. And he said, I'll do up a statement and I'll send it to your email. You just give it to the CPS workers. Well, I did that and I gave it to them and I went in there and broke down in their office. I couldn't take Jalen inside and they still demanded that I did and I couldn't. And Jeremy took her little hand and I watched through the window as he had Jalen over and he came out and he broke for a minute.
Yeah.
And I just held him while he held me and we didn't get to see them for all of August, which is Jason Jalen's birthdays, or October. It wasn't until November that we were allowed to see them again. Julian sure was getting back at me and Marty. They definitely cut as deep as they could with that.
They did. And it doesn't make sense that you had Jacob, right?
Yeah. You know, we did the work with the Uplifting Families and Uplifting Families workers. You know, I met like 4 of them and they're all like, you guys aren't typical. What are you guys in this for? Like, y'all pass all your drug screens and a CPS worker doesn't even know why you don't have your kids. Like, what is this? And I explained to him that it was pretty much my ex getting back at me and he hit me where it hurt. I didn't know that Julie was working at the Juvenile Correction Center and I didn't know that she had so much interaction with CPS.
Mm-hmm.
She had so much interaction with Nicholas County, Fayette County, all surrounding counties while working for the Juvenile Detention Center. So she had updates on what was going on in our case.
Things that she absolutely shouldn't have.
Yes. So when she found out that our kids were coming home, it was a strike to her. So they took Raylee, the surviving children, and they left and went to a campground. They didn't pay their rent on the place they were staying, and they went to a campground until they could find a place to rent, just so that I couldn't find them after the kids came home. It happened so fast because normally the process in the court, there's almost always charges pressed.
Mm-hmm.
There's no parent walking out of there without getting charges. But we were the first in 20 years to have our entire case dismissed. The entire thing. So for 10 months, we suffered, our children suffered, and it was dismissed because of the video on my phone and the doctor's testimony that he gave me in the beginning. They had that since the beginning. So yeah, all of the claims that were laid against us was just dissolved, like it never happened. And to this day, there's no record it ever happened. But one day, I'm going to have to tell my kids that it did happen.
And it wasn't your fault in the least.
No, not at all. And I didn't see it coming after the doctor had told me, no, he's fine. Everything's fine. The people from Uplifting Families, they had become very good friends. And believe it or not, the new CPS worker that came in on the case is like, what is this? This isn't right. Like, this is not typical.
There are good people who work for CPS. We just don't see them often enough.
Yes, Jessica was someone who knew what she was doing, and she knew that when she came into our case This is phony. There is something wrong with this. These people are not bad people. I can tell you, uplifting families, they do their job and they do it very well. The contracting company off of CPS, because they will show up at your door. They will pick you up. They will take you for drug screens whenever they want to. They are there to check in on you and make sure you're doing everything correct. And after a month of that, I had become friends with them because I'd spent so much time with them. So we ended up taking a polygraph on that too. And that's what helped getting the kids home sooner too. It usually takes 6 months to place children back into the home. It took 6 weeks for us. A month and a half and the kids were home. That is why Marty, Julie, and Cherie ended up at a campground. I would love if Nicholas County would just, as soon as they get released, Nicholas County pick it up and be like, wait a minute, you did this in our county.
By the way, there's no criminal statute of limitations on felonies in West Virginia, so they could still face child abuse charges if you get to the prosecutor in Nicholas County. And God, I hope they will.
I would love to just bring it to their attention. I couldn't sue CPS, which I don't care about a lawsuit. What I care about is them getting out. And they are child abusers. They are monsters. They are psychopaths. And before he even got with her, he beat on me whenever I was pregnant with the baby that he killed.
You definitely need whatever protection you can get against him. If that means getting him back into prison, great. Whatever it takes.
Something that I was really thinking about. It would be really nice for them to pay for what they did with Facebook fraud.
Oh, that too. Yeah, I wonder about that.
They didn't pay for anything at the funeral. They took that money and they went on vacation. Every bit at the funeral, all of it, and it was $11,800 something. All of it was paid for and donated from everyone who came in, people from the funeral home company, from my family. A lot of my family paid for it, and the church I came from growing up donated a lot. I was left with $1,100 to pay, so that's not that bad. But they ended up getting 900 and some off of GoFundMe and paid nothing to the funeral home, and then go and get married and take pictures of their trip to Florida and how she was crowned Miss West Virginia Spectacular down in Florida for sepsis awareness.
Because of her little angel, of course.
Yeah, oh my gosh, I about died whenever I seen that. Like, what is wrong with this person? Is she mentally damaged?
There are personality disorders galore among those three.
Yeah, well, she's got all of them. But when we're sitting at the table inside the lobby at the funeral home discussing how the funeral is going to go, they had Raylee's body. I will say this. After Raylee's body was released, I was called from the medical examiner and they said, where would you like for us to send your daughter? And I said, to Tyree's funeral home. That is a family funeral home of ours. And I have a family cemetery. And then I found out that Marty and Julie came in there and argued and brought a different funeral home, Harrowing, with them to collect Raylee's body to take her to a Harrowing funeral home. And I was trying to stop them from taking her to Harrowing. And while we're in the middle of this, you got my mother beside me, Jeremy is beside me. You got Marty and Julie at the other side, the funeral home director, the secretary. We're all sitting at the table. Marty and I are on separate ends of the table. Like I said, I'm in shock. And the only thing I could put together was looking up at him and saying, I know that you want to go with Harrowing. I know you want to go with your family cemetery. I know you want to do everything your way. But can you understand this? I am Raylee's mother. You are Raylee's father. And at this point, nobody knew that Raylee was abused to death. I had my suspicions, obviously. But the shock was like, okay, let's just get this done. So let's do this together. You do 50%, I'll do 50%. That was our baby. And he's nodding his head like he's listening to me and stuff. All of a sudden, Julie takes her hands and slams them down on the table and says, you are not going to speak like you're the mother of my daughter.
Oh, my God.
And I was just in shock. And I'm like, who are you at this point? Like, you're nothing. Why are you even saying anything? And then Jeremy's like, all right, everybody needs to calm down. I think that me as Janice's husband and Julie is Marty's girlfriend. Julie, why don't me and you just leave the room and let Marty and Janice talk about their child and what they need to do? He's always the one with the level head. He's always the one that keeps everything together and calm. And Julie just started getting loud and running her mouth. And then finally, she starts screaming about crazy things like, I haven't seen my daughter. I haven't seen her, and I miss her. And I haven't seen her in 14 days. My mind just collapses thinking about it. But she just
made it all about her.
Yes.
That's insane. When the child's parents are sitting right there, it's all about her.
Yeah, and you could see how she totally dominant over him. And I never thought I'd see that. But he didn't say nothing else. He quit nodding his head and everything. He just sit there like, uh-oh, I'm going to be quiet. But then the funeral home director said, this is the death of their child. And you're standing up screaming while we're trying to discuss her arrangements. And I don't think it's very good for you to be in this room. And she said, well, fine. Me and Marty will be sitting outside. And I don't want anything else planned because I want her body moved to Howland.
Well, who cares what you want, lady?
The funeral home director, Jonathan's like, okay, this needs to stop. Let's just take a break. Everybody just take a beat. And they looked at me and said, would you be able? Your daughter is downstairs. And I just broke because I'm going to go see my daughter and knowing she's not alive. And it's not like what Julie's over here screaming. Oh, I haven't seen her. And she's not there anymore. And I was shaking and I nodded my head and Julie hollered, we'll go ahead and go down there. And the funeral home director looked at her and said, please go into the front sitting room. And he got her out. And he sat there with me and I just had my hands on my face. I couldn't breathe. Jeremy was rubbing my back. I can remember that, but it just feels like everything was frozen. It's like we were sitting at the table and it seems like I can't even remember walking. I remember getting up and I was going down these steps. As soon as you come down the steps and it kind of curls around spirally. As soon as I went around the spiral, I could see her arms. I could see her face. I just ran to her. And I wrapped my arms around her at the top of her head to my cheek. And I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how. What do you do? What do you do? And I started singing. I can't sing, but she loved it. And I sang, you are my sunshine. It's the only thing that came out. My mom was trying to hold me. Jeremy was behind both of us, trying to hold us both up. And my hands started going down her arms, and she was bruised. And I started stroking her head. And right above her left ear, around her temple, was just a knot in her. And it felt so big. She had bruising on her neck. And the only thing out of the blanket was her shoulders, her arms. And just from seeing her face, her shoulders, and her arms, there was bruises in so many different stages all over her. They would be so black or they would be yellow from healing. And her neck, that I have seen before. It's fingerprints and bruises. Her fingerprint. Someone had grabbed her by her neck. And I couldn't leave. And I'd been down there so long. And Jeremy suggests, I need you to listen to me. We have to go. We have to go at this moment. We have to go do something. Okay? And we're going to do it for Raylee. Okay? It was so hard to walk away from her and leave her there by herself. I know she wasn't there anymore. I know. But just her, and just knowing that that's the end. That all of this of me saying, no, it's not her, and all the disbelief of she can't be gone, she can't be gone, all of that hits you, and it's a realization that her heart is not beating anymore. I walk back up the stairs, and on the way up, he turns around and talks to the secretary, and then I could feel his hand on my back, and I went to turn around to go back down, and I was kind of out of it, and he's like, no, Janice, we're not going back down. We got somewhere else we have to go. Just felt like my mind was out of my body. I was pulled to her. I wanted to be right there with her. I didn't want to go anywhere else.
I'll take another brief sponsor break and be right back.
We made it out in the parking lot and said bye to my mom. And God, I felt frozen in time. And I remember I could barely talk and my lips were numb. And I said to Jeremy, I said, babe, she's been beat. And he said, I know. He said, we're going to the prosecutor's office right now. He said, I talked to the funeral home director and the secretary, and they said it's the first place we need to go now. And we went up there and rang the buzzer, and they let us in immediately. As soon as I said Janice Wriston, it was like they opened the door, and it was closing time for them. So I was surprised they let us in. But these people know us because they had a lot of respect for us for what we had went through with the kids just 7 months earlier. And Wes Tony told me, I know. And that's the first thing he said was, I know. And he was at the MDT whenever they decided that this all just needed to stop. The kids need to come home. This is ridiculous. So I felt comfortable with him. And he said, don't worry, this is not going unnoticed. I said, they're talking about taking her body to Highland. And he said, they already have. He said, just breathe. I promise you, I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know how it's going to happen. But I can promise you it's going to happen and it's going to be taken care of. He said, you guys have been through enough. And then to beat it all on top of everything that you guys have suffered and made it through for this to happen to you now, I am so sorry. But trust me, the police are all over this. And I promise you tomorrow this will be in your hands. And that evening, as soon as we got home, I got the phone call from, I'm going to think of her name. Megan Maynor. Here it is.
She was the other CPS, right?
She is the awesome CPS worker.
Yes, she was in the interviews with Marty and Julian.
She knew about what I had recently been through. She knew about their sneaking around and trying to hide Raylee. Everyone knew about that. Everyone in the county knew that I had been searching for Raylee for months. CPS knew about it, the Women's Resources, the courthouse. There wasn't anybody who didn't know that I was looking for Raylee. And then boom, she's gone. That's why Wes Tony was ready, and he did assure me that everything would be taken care of. And this is at like 5:30, and I cried. And Wes Tony hugged me and said, it will be taken care of, I promise. He shook Jeremy's hand and said, I know this is impossible. Just try to look out for Janice the best you can. And Jeremy said, of course. He said, don't worry, Betty, we'll get this straightened out. And yeah, her body had already been moved. And we left from there and made it to Raleigh County. As soon as we walked into our house, I got a call from Megan Maynor. Megan Maynor said, Janice, you're in charge. You're in charge of all of this. They have no say-so. And if they think that they do, I will make sure that they don't. I'll be the one there to let them know that they're not going to get what they want. So I was like, well, what are you going to do with Julie? She said, don't you worry about Julie. She said, I'm not even going to call her. I'll deal with her whenever she shows up at the funeral home tomorrow. She said, just be at how long? And I said, okay. She said, I'll make it biological parents only. How about that? And I said, okay, that sounds good. So I showed up there, and sure enough, she pulled in the parking lot by herself. She didn't even have Marty with her. She said she was there to speak on behalf of Marty. And Megan Maynor said, you are not Marty, nor are you married to Marty, nor is this going to involve you, because this is for biological parents only. She said, well, Marty's in the hospital. And Megan Maynor said, well, that's just too bad. Looks like Janice is going to take it from here. I went in, and the How Long people were very pro-Julie for some reason. I have no idea why. You would think that she had already paid for this or something. And I asked them, can you just transfer funds to Tyree's funeral home? And they said, oh, well, they've only paid us $200. And I thought, why are you so persistent on having Raylee's funeral?
Because you didn't want it.
I just didn't understand them. I didn't understand them at all in their part in this. But I can only imagine she probably knew this person personally, just like she had everyone else. So I thought, I'll give this a try. So they're like, would you like to look at the casket that was picked out? And I said, sure. So I walked in there to look at the casket that they had picked out. This was big enough to fit probably somebody 6 foot tall and 400 pounds. This casket was huge. I could not even believe it. I said, this casket? And they said, yeah, this is what size we keep. I said, she's a child. They said, well, we have baby caskets, but we don't have. I said, no, I'm not doing none of this here.
They couldn't just place an order.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Raylee did have to be moved once more. And I hated that. But whenever I came into Tyree's, I felt at home again. Tyree's funeral home buried my dad and know my mom personally. And they also buried my grandfather. Everything had been set up at Highline for me to come in and spend from 9 to 11 with Raylee and my family. And then from 11 to 2, Julie and her family and Marty was going to be there, and I had to leave.
Her family.
This is crazy. I could not believe my ears whenever I heard all of this. And I could not believe it. I thought, but what is wrong with this funeral home? And they're like, and she's going to be buried in the Browning Cemetery. They've already dug the plot. And I'm like,
too bad.
So they dig a plot, and you think that means that's where she's going? I said, you know what? You can just cancel all of that, all of this here at Highline. Anything that you guys had planned. No, I'm going to Tyree's. Tyree's, that lady that had worked there, she knew, like I said, my whole family. She knew my mom. She knew my thoughts. She knew my wishes. She knew every detail. She even paid for Raylee's obituary, which was $280. And I was the one who wrote the obituary with her help. She pretty much put it together and had me go through it and do the details of it. And it was hard. And then I found out Marty had been up there every single day that week, begging them, what can I do to get her at the Browning Cemetery? What can I do? And I don't know why it mattered so much.
Because it was not what you wanted. That's it.
Right. Well, whenever they mentioned the Browning Cemetery, whenever I was talking about, 50% me, 50% you, let's work on this together. Whenever I mentioned that, I said, yeah, I have my family cemetery and you have yours. Why don't we just go with Highline's cemetery and she could be laid to rest there so no one has to feel awkward about coming to visit her grave.
Yeah.
And I put that out on the table, and Julie absolutely refused that and said, no, she is going to the Browning Cemetery. It doesn't matter what you say, what you do. That's where she will be laid to rest.
I love that she thought she had any say.
She really thought that she did. And she was nothing to Raylee. I don't know. She convinced herself that she was somebody.
Yes, because these people believe their own lies.
Right. And making it through the funeral things was hard. I can't even form into words. I did go back the day before the funeral after I got all the plans arranged and everything was done, from the time that I had seen her body. I think it was 2 days later. It's hard to think back on it. Gosh, Lane, I was numb all over and just shocked. My legs didn't want to walk, didn't want to hold me up, and felt like I was just breaking. Jerry, he just got me through it. And I stood by the casket the entire time. I got scared for a minute because they called everyone out and I was there by myself. And Jonathan's like, Janice, it's okay. Don't worry. It's okay. And I'm like, what's going on? Wait a minute. And they went to close her casket. And I said, no, what are you doing? You're not supposed to close her casket yet. And they said, it's just for a minute. And I said, okay, so it'll be open back up because we're just getting started here. And I want to make sure everyone has a chance to say goodbye to Raylee. And they opened the back doors and that's when I seen her. One of the surviving children coming in with a handful of flowers with Lauren. Lauren is kind of like a second mom to a very good, kind-hearted person, I could tell, because surviving child number 2. She handed me the flowers and said, you're Raylee's mommy. You look like Raylee. And I just, in the presence of a child, you don't want to collapse, break down and start bawling. She said, Raylee's my best friend. I love her. And I just crouched down to my knees and I hugged her and I said, I love her too. And I know she loves you. She said, okay, well, here's the flowers for Raylee. And tell Raylee I said bye. And bye, Raylee's mom. And Lauren just took her hand and walked her back out. And it took me a minute to breathe after that. They had me leave the room. I was out for 5 minutes and then I came back in and they opened the casket back up. But apparently they must have had her escorted in. Sherry and Julie, them, I don't know. One of them or both of them were escorted in. This place was covered in police. There was cops outside with their lights on. There was police standing by the doors. There was undercover police all through the funeral home. And I didn't like whenever they closed the casket because that was going to be it. That was it. Closing the casket and then it's over.
I know what you mean, but there's no way she's not with you at all times.
No, I can feel her. I heard her a couple weeks ago in the middle of the night say, Mom. And I jumped up in the bed and thought it was a dream. Jerry didn't hear it, of course. She was here, right here with me. I feel like she's with me right now, even telling a story, especially after being silenced for so long through the gag order and then through the health conditions that took over after she died. I was in so much shock that I couldn't even realize what was going on for so long. And, my other babies are growing up and my husband's here and I wasn't. And my health just started getting worse and worse. And then they said I was experiencing broken heart syndrome and that I had a heart attack. A few months later, I'm in heart failure. A few months later, I'm in kidney failure.
Oh, my God.
Been in ICU 5 times for sepsis. I tried to write my book during that time. And gosh, like I said, I can't even really remember everything that I wrote. I'm going to have to go back through it and make adjustments. And I do plan on finishing the book. But
I know you will.
yeah, I had my sunshine. She deserves that. She was so special. She was so special in so many ways, and it's so unfair, which I know life's unfair. I know. I get that. I've had a lot of unfairness. When my kids were taken for no reason, that was unfair. But we toughed it out and made it through it. And I think the court just thought that they made it better with a full dismissal, which, yeah, it couldn't have ended any better. I mean, a full dismissal was the best that you can get. And considering it had been the only one in Fayette County, it's impressive, but it should have never happened. With Raylee, it should have never happened. Had one person just listened, stood by me, pushed with me, listened, just listened, he will kill her. She's 8 years old and he's going to kill her.
And you used those words.
Those words. Yeah, because I knew it was all a setup, the whole play of as soon as I found out that she had been working with CPS, I found out the whole thing of my kids being jerked out with all of that happening. And it was a tragedy on its own, and that's time that I can't get back. And then to not see Raylee for almost 18 months before she was killed.
And for people to say that you were absent.
One person called me the bio mom. And I said, the bio mom?
You mean the mom?
Did you just call me the bio mom? I'm her only mom. She had no other mom. And then I'm not going to say this individual's name, but she was like, oh my gosh, Janice, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. It was one person specifically in his family. And she didn't mean to do it. I think she had talked to him and he had called me that. And maybe she had just repeated that. Mm-hmm. And after it came to, the reality, because everybody believed his lie that I was the bad person or I was the crazy person or whatever. And, of course, people in his circle are going to listen to him. I'm not speaking to none of them. So, sure, they're listening to him. And when I was called the bio mom, I did jump and say, only mom.
Right.
And I fought for her as hard as I could fight for her, especially whenever I went to court and I told them he is touching her. He is hurting her. And the judge looks at me and says, how do you know? I see that you didn't even take her to CAMC. I said, did I need to take her to CAMC after she had already talked to a doctor? Doctor had already evaluated her. She already had 2 tears on her bottom. The police were there. I filed the protection order. So now we need the protection. And I was told that, well, it was basically these words. First, judge says, I don't know if you understand the severity of the claims that you are making against Mr. Browning.
Unbelievable. He still thought you were lying.
And I said, whether it's against Mr. Browning or whether it's against Mr. Browning's father, who was just released for sexual abuse. And then the judge said, oh, okay, so that's what this is about, because his father got released from prison and he was in prison over sexual abuse charges. And then he looks at Marty and says, is your father anywhere near your daughter? And Marty said, no. And the judge said, well, then that's it. I said, no, she's saying her father. If you just read it, he said, Miss Wriston, we have been back and forth about this. You're here every couple months looking at me and trying to change the order in which I felt comfortable with. So what if I was to change my order? And what if I was to take her out of Mr. Browning's custody and place her with you and something happened to her? That would be on me.
Well, it's on him.
And I said, well, she's not safe. Look at what happened with the belt marks. Look at what happened with her leg. Judge didn't know anything about her leg. He said, I don't know anything about it. I don't want to hear anything about it. I've already heard enough in this. I made the arrangements. You stick with the arrangements. Do not come back in my courtroom, or I will make sure that you lose custody of your daughter and she will go into state custody. I know he meant it towards me because I was the one constantly complaining. Marty did take me in there one time for child support with Julie's handwriting all over every piece of paper that came through. None of it was ever filed by Marty. It was always Julie filing this paperwork.
Let's hear another word from my sponsors.
And I do want to say this. Marty blocked out all of his family. And I do want it known that that was a mistake, because he actually does have a normal, good mother, and he has a good stepfather, which he hated. He hated his stepfather, and the things that he told me about Donald was terrible. But Donald is not terrible. He would tell me terrible things about Tina, his mother. But Tina is not a terrible person. Tina would have never let anything happen to Raylee. I know that. He didn't want to go around his mother. He didn't want to go around Donald. He didn't want to go around Donald's children. And he wanted to stay as far away from all of them as he could. But yet, he wanted to be around his dad, the one that was in prison.
For molesting a family member, child.
Right. Right. Why did he block out the good people that was in his life? The good people that could have been like, oh my gosh, she's bruised and beaten, Marty.
Yep, that's why.
Or, oh my gosh, Marty, look how skinny she is. Feed her.
Exactly.
Yes, because they would have brought attention to it. He has his own sadistic messed upness to him. And he found his match with her. That's all I can say.
I've always wondered, how do these people find each other? Is there a dating service for psychopaths? I don't understand it.
Or is there like a magnet? Just get like magnetically attracted, like look at each other like, hey, you a psycho?
Hey, you'd starve a kid, wouldn't you?
Yeah. Would you beat one?
Oh, and your sister too?
Right. I always wondered too about that. You got Julie and Cherie and Marty. The officer asked me, so is Julie and Cherie like, is that his girlfriends?
Huh?
Is there one in particular? I know that he ended up marrying Julie, but is the other girl like, are they like a threesome type thing? And I said, Officer Pack, I have no idea. I don't want to know. I have heard this brought up. People had said it before. Janice, don't you think it's weird that they all live together like that? Odd that, you know, he didn't just find one psychopath, he found two. And if anyone was to ask me if I thought that Julie was intimidated by Raylee, my answer is yes, 1,000 times over.
Like I said, Raylee was beautiful, which matters to Julie.
Yes.
She looked just like you, which, oh my God, we can't have that.
Uh-huh.
And Marty may have shown up front that he loved her, and she couldn't abide by that, so she trained that out of him, and all of this happened.
Because in the beginning, first time he looked at her, like at the hospital, he was horrible.
Yeah, once you eventually got there.
Yeah, once I eventually got there.
Whenever I get in there, he's screaming, he's mean. And then he started screaming and cussing me out. And the nurses were like, out now, not just out of the room, get out of the hospital, get out. He had to go outside. My mom said when she pulled up outside, he was standing beside the truck smoking a joint. And my mom's like, what's going on? He said, oh, it was stuffy in there. I couldn't breathe. I had to come out here. She didn't know until she came inside. And I'm like, yeah, he got kicked out. And I was exhausted because I had been up all night. I was so tired. And they said, well, you can go to sleep for a little while. And there was like this little button thing on the epidural. So I drift off in this beautiful sleep. I can never forget it. It was sunshine and rainbows, and I was in no pain. And I could remember the nurses waking me up and my mom standing there, and they're like, well, it's time for you to have a baby. And I said, huh? What? And they're like, you're completely dilated. We're going to have to turn down the epidural now. And I'm like, wait a minute. I'm not ready.
Yeah.
Like, well, you have to get ready because, and she popped my water at that time, and she's like, baby's coming. And they're like, real quick question. Do you want the dad in here for this? And like, I think this nurse was praying that I would say no because they were getting ready to, you know, adjust the epidural to where I could feel and push. And mom's like, Janice, and I'm like, I guess, you know.
Yeah.
And mom runs down and gets him, and he comes in there, and as soon as they adjusted the epidural, I mean, he came in there just in time. Like, my mom was on one side, he was on the other, and he came in there just in time for his daughter to be born. All his meanness, I don't know where it went. He just looked at her and was just like, wow, baby. I'm talking 9 months of hell. of this man screaming that he can't have kids because of diabetes, wanting to know who the baby father is, wanting me to say something. I don't know what he was searching for, but in those moments, all of it was gone. He was just like, I'm a dad. And when she was born, she looked just like him. And she had this beautiful sunshine hair. Oh my gosh, beautiful. I say sunshine hair because when I was holding her in my arms, the window was like right there to the right of me. There's so much going on in the room and there's all this chaos. And I'm holding my baby for the very first time. I'm first person holding her and I'm kissing her and I'm like, my baby. Like, look at my little girl. And I'm like pulling her up on my chest and I look down and her hair is just shimmering from the light coming inside because it's like a little bit after 2:00 and the sun was just positioned perfect in the sky to just shoot right through the window on her little head. And it just gleamed. And I just, oh, you're my sunshine. Oh my God, you're perfect. Look at you. 10 fingers, 10 toes. This beautiful baby. And she's mine. And I always did call her that.
Well,
I never said this is our baby. I always said this is my baby, my baby. And she was always my baby all the way up to I don't even remember stopping. She loved to be inside of my shirt.
yeah.
I remember like kangarooing her around in my hoodies and stuff and kept her right up against my belly with her little piggy tail sticking out of the neck of my shirt. She was just, because I always wore a tank top and then I would put on a hoodie and she would just cuddle up inside the hoodie right up against me. And even all the way up till she was 6, almost 7, at that age, I got my robe. And she would take her arms and wrap them around my neck in the morning, like right before the sun would come up. And she would hold on to my neck and I'd be like, hold real tightly. And I'd put on my robe, and with the strength of her arms, she would hold on and wrap her legs around my stomach, and I'd put my robe on. And I would wrap it around her backside and put my hands up underneath her butt there. And she would just have herself just propped, like that's where she belonged. And we would just sit on the porch, watch the sun. I was always an early morning person, and she was too. She loved mornings. She loved it. She was definitely sunshine baby. My house was perfect for sunrises. It would come up and creep through. She would come to the end of the bed and she'd say, "Ah, the sun's waking up. The sun's going to wake up. Mom." Okay, I'm going to say there was a couple times that I was like, "Come here." And I would just pull her in the bed and just snuggle her back to sleep.
Exactly.
Yes. And then there were other times that she would be like, "Are you going to get your coffee, Mom? Are you going to get your coffee, Mom?" And I'd be like, "Yes, baby, I'm getting my coffee." And I'd get up and she would be toting my robe around, coming right behind me with my red robe. It has hearts all over it. She would sleep with it, snuggle with it. And every morning, like getting her up and holding her butt and wrapping her up and sitting in the chair on the porch, just watching the sunrise, drinking a coffee and just snuggling with her. And Mommy, the sun's awake.
I love that so much.
She was a joy. Every night, whenever we would lay down and go to sleep, I would always say, I thank God for every moment I have with my babies. And it's because I always feared. I don't know if it's mother's intuition, but I could feel my time is limited. So every squeeze was that much tighter. Every time she laid on my shoulder, every detail has been burned into my mind. Just the trace of her face, the hairline, her laugh just echoes. The thought of her just brings a smile to my face still. I have beautiful memories, even though my iPad was stolen. It was her iPad. But all of her pictures, all of her videos, all of her birthdays, all of everything was on it. And it was stolen in 2019, right after. And even on the cover, it said Raylee on it. So even the person that stole it knew whose it was. I can't stand it that all of it's gone. But my memories are strong all the way to the scent of her head and her beauty. Oh, yeah. She outshined Julie. Julie would be nothing, a grain of sand compared to Rayleigh's beauty. She wanted her hair to grow, and I started giving her Flintstone vitamins, and I would send them with Cherie. And Rayleigh told me that Cherie would throw them away as soon as they got there. And every time Rayleigh's hair would grow out, she would cut it. Surviving child one said at the hearing that the reason that she would cut Rayleigh's hair was because she knew how much Rayleigh loved Rapunzel and how much Rayleigh wanted her hair to grow. That is why Cherie cut it off.
Just because she's an awful person.
If they didn't want her, what was so wrong with giving her to me? You know, Marty called me the day after going to the hospital, the day after Candace called to tell Jeremy to tell me that Rayleigh was gone.
Mm-hmm.
He called me the very next day, and I remember screaming in the phone, "What did you do? What did you do?" Janice, I didn't do anything. Janice, I didn't do anything. I seen her that morning. She was fine. I was leaving for work. It was around 6 or 7. She came running to me and she wrapped her arms around my stomach and she said, "Daddy, don't go to work. I don't feel good today." And I told her, maybe we can go to the doctor tomorrow. And he told me this on the phone the day after she was gone. There's no way she could have got up out of the bed. And he told the police that nobody saw him that morning, that he just got up and went for work. Nobody seen him. But yet he told me that she jumped up and ran to him. And
it's hard to keep your story straight when you lie.
Definitely. My grandmother used to always say everything comes out in the wash.
Mm-hmm.
So any lies you tell, believe it, they will come up.
Oh, yeah. The autopsy proved him to be a huge liar.
Yeah, he's a monster. All 3 of them. They snuffed out one of the most beautiful lights in this world. And I hope that her story can bring change. And I hope that if there is a woman that's getting beaten and scared, I do hope that she hears this. And I hope that she does ask to speak to the police at the hospital after he's done beat the hell out of her. Because it comes up in court. Why didn't you call the police? I couldn't believe it. All of it. The story that he came up with, that I was with strangers. Yeah, right. These are your friends for like years. Just because John distracted him while I got away.
Yep.
I had it all planned out. I knew what I was doing. I had the whole plan. So many nights for the first 2 years of her life, he would scream and yell and cuss in the other room. And I would ask him and beg him, "Please be quiet. Please, I'll do anything. Be quiet. Don't wake her up." And then she'd wake up and I'd go in there and hold her and just sway back and forth and sing "You Are My Sunshine." And I sang it to her since she was a baby, all the way up to the point where she was big enough to come bounce in my bed and say, "Mommy, sing You Are My Sunshine." She knew she was my little sunshine. She knew that.
Oh, yeah.
I loved the way that she would talk and just ramble and just go on and on and on about the blades of grass, the trees, the flowers are waking up. "Look, Mom, look over there. There's a bird." She was just observant of everything around. And of course, as everyone's heard, she loved Rapunzel.
Yeah.
But she also loved Frozen. It wasn't Elsa that she looked to like most do. It was Anna. She liked Anna. And she had an Anna doll, and she had a Rapunzel doll. And I still have her Anna doll. And I still have her baby book, which I kept up with. And I have this picture of her. She's sitting on a porch playing dress up. And it was like dead of summer. We're talking 90 degrees outside. She had on a little toboggan. I had like little stabs. She loved to play dress up.
Yeah.
And every Halloween, I would always save her Halloween costume and let her play dress up. Or whenever they would have the sales right after Halloween, everything would be marked down like 75%.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Go in there and get all kinds of stuff. And baby dolls. Hallie was more of the baby doll thing. Rayleigh liked her ponies. And Rayleigh would try to put the doll clothes on her ponies.
Well, you have to try.
Hallie was playing with the baby dolls. Hallie was a couple years older, but Hallie would be like, no, Raylee, you're supposed to put it on the babies, not on the ponies.
Oh.
They were so cute playing together, and they were so close. And I have so many pictures. Hallie and Raylee would go get Jalen's playpen and snuggle Jalen and get her up in the mornings. And it would just be so fun on the weekends that Hallie and Jacob and Raylee and then Jason. I grew up in a family, you know, my mom had 5 kids and we were always busy and our cousins were always in town. So there was always like 8 to 10 kids running around. So that's my comfort right there. I love kids and I love the noise. The only thing that scares me is silence. Silence scares me. Raylee loved her hair being done. She loved it. The side braid was her favorite, and that's what I did for her viewing. But she felt like a princess whenever it was braided. Mm-hmm. And she also had a Rapunzel wig. That Rapunzel wig, she wore it around so much. I couldn't keep it because she just wore it out by the time she was 6 or 7 because the hair was so long it dragged the ground. And every person, when she'd go to church, she loved church. She had like this Jesus and God and where do they come from? And if there was God, who made God? And if God made us, then who made God? And if Jesus is God's son, then what does that make us? Because they say that we're God's children. So if Jesus was God, she would go in depth.
I love that.
For 5 and 6 years old, just in depth about the curiosity of the Bible and how interesting and amusing, because I grew up on all these Bible stories. So whenever I would tuck her in at night, I would tell her all the stories of Jonah and the well and the giants and Moses. And gosh, I can't even think of them all right now. Just all of them. But Joseph and the coat of many colors and how his brothers sold him. Why did they sell him, Mom? Just if there was no telling a bedtime story and Raylee going to sleep, she would want to contradict and understand every aspect of this story. Well, wait a minute. If this is how this happened, then
Mom, this is a plot hole.
and there's something more to this, Mom. There's something else. I can feel it.
Oh, I love that. She's so smart.
It was easier to just put her on my lap and sing, my sunshine to her and just rock and sway, or to put her to sleep if she would crawl up in my bed and I would turn Tinkerbell on and she would snuggle up right up on my collarbone with my cheek on her hair. And I can still feel that. That was the easiest ways of getting her to sleep. And she would always say that she wanted her bedtime snack, which was she would get like carrots and crackers or celery or crackers and cheese.
Yeah.
Occasionally, I would do Oreos and milk. That blood sugar stuff, no. I was not pricking her fingers. No. There was nothing wrong with her blood sugar. Nothing. Like, whenever they told me to start checking it, and she would let me poke her finger, and I checked it, and it was normal all the time. There was one time, it was like at 68, and that was first thing in the morning. And it was before breakfast. And she was hungry, and just feed her, and she's not going to have blood sugar issues. She did not. And Sherry would send me a message that would say, did you check her blood sugar? And I'd be like, yeah, it was at like 92 and 110 and 96. Oh, I was just blowing off numbers. Raylee was fine the entire time. There was nothing wrong. She would eat breakfast like a normal child, lunch like a normal child, dinner like a normal child, and then, her bedtime snack. She was fine. There was nothing wrong. And no, she did not gorge herself till she would throw up. No, she wasn't like purging. She
at 8.
Gosh, that's insane. All of the stuff that they said, everything that they came up with. No. Said she had ADHD? No. I have seen ADHD. She does not have ADHD. Not that ADHD is a bad thing.
Right, but it.
Chase, my son, has ADHD. The open heart surgery They said may have possibly caused him to have it because it may have caused a little bit of lack of oxygen to his brain. And not that it's a bad thing, but I'm going to tell you the boy can bounce off the walls. But Raylee didn't have it. She was the most well-behaved child.
Time for another quick sponsor break.
Snuggles. Just snuggles. She didn't need anything to occupy her time. She didn't need to be entertained. She had a beautiful imagination. She could play Barbies and ponies for hours on end. She could play dress up. She could go in the living room, turn on the TV, and watch whatever she wanted to watch. It was just normal. She would be home, and she was just a normal child. She slept good all the time. There was never any problems with that.
It is amazing what lack of food can do. I mean, of course, she's getting up in the middle of the night to quote unquote steal food because she doesn't get it. But she wasn't doing it at your house because you fed her and you treated her well. There were no behavioral issues.
No, none. There was no behavioral issues at all. No punishments. Never, ever. And I had such a fear every time she had to go back. But while she was in school, whenever she started talking about Miss Silly Birdie, the way she first said Silly Birdie, it came out as Silly Birdie.
Yeah.
So I would always ask, what's Miss Silly Birdie doing? You know, I didn't know it was Silly Birdie.
Right.
But Raylee would talk about her, talk on end about Miss Silly Birdie, of what she did, of what she said, of what she gave her, and what she... And she would always have so much to say about her. She loved Miss Little Birdie. And it made me feel safe about her going back to her dad's and knowing that she was going to school every day. To these teachers in which she talked about that she loved, she mentioned all of her teachers. Miss Little Birdie just stuck because her pick, I guess, that's the one she always talked about. So it was a peace of mind when school was in. And in the summertime, I would try to keep her as much as I could. Tell you one thing, she loved watching those movies and the Tinkerbell and Dr. McStuffins. And it just occurred to my mom, she hated Monster House. Gosh, I mean, it has a good ending, but the only time I ever remember her expressing like any fear of anything, she did not like Monster House. It was a Halloween kids movie, and Jacob and Hallie was watching it, and the whole thing just kind of creeped her out. She hated it. It's the only thing that I can think of that she disliked.
She was so agreeable.
When I think of Raye, I think of so many good memories. I don't have any bad except for drop-offs. Pickups were great. Now she'd come running. Mom! Oh, Mommy! But it was sad on Sundays because she would be in the bath. She loved baths. She would peek her head up from the bathtub and say, Mom, is it Sunday? And yeah, that's what it was. Long periods of silence. I didn't want to lie to her.
You just want her to have that peace for a little while longer.
Yes, that's what it was. I would always tell her, don't worry, we'll stop at McDonald's first, or we'll go early and I'll give you an extra love and snuggle, okay? She'd cry. It was hard. It felt like she would go there, be beat and bruised, dirty, when I'd pick her up, and then I'd spend the whole weekend doctoring her up mentally and physically to send her back for her to go through all that again. A complete nightmare, and it feels so unfair. Her 8 years of life, and that's what she had to live.
It does sound like she packed a lot in, though. So smart and knowledgeable and curious.
So smart. Oh my gosh. Oh, so. Jeez, I've never seen a kid pick up on everything. She would want to help with dishes and folding clothes at 4. There's one special time I can remember. It was like whenever I decided Jeremy is definitely the one. Me and Jeremy had been together, talking, dating for about 6 months. And finally I thought, gonna let her meet him. She just loved him. She crawled all over him. She wanted to hold his hand as we walked through the mall. She wanted to have him buckle her into her car seat. And we were sitting on the couch at the house. And she just turned 3 at this point. So I'm sitting on one side of her. He's sitting on one side of her. She scooches over close to him and just lays her head on him. So she's got her head laying on his shoulder. And he looks down. He could see her sleepy eyes. And I had never seen this before. He took his finger and put it on her forehead and went gently down her nose and her face and would just let off right at her nose. So right there at the top of her hairline, he'd go down past her eyes, past her nose, and then let off. It wasn't 5 minutes later, she was laying there just fully asleep, just knocked out.
Oh, he's the baby whisperer.
Yes, he was amazing. And I'm like, how did you do that? I have to snuggle with her, and she lays on my chest, and then she pops her head up, and I have to lay it back down. She pops back up, lay it down, pop up, lay down. No, lay down. No, lay down. And he sits there and just strokes her forehead for like 5 minutes, and she's out. Which, he had Jacob and Hallie, and he had his own experience and grew up with his family, and baby whisperer. No, he won me over. He knew what Raylee meant to me.
Yeah.
He knew that this is my life. This is everything to me. And never, ever once would I have ever said, you have to call him Dad. Even though he was her stepfather, I would have never been like, you're calling him Dad. I'm not going to overstep that boundary. And I feel like that's a little piece of humanity there.
When you have that weird mindset that everything has to be your way. And, Julie had to be the center of the world. I'm sure that's why she was in beauty pageants. Certainly wasn't because she's beautiful.
If I was dead or completely absent, okay, I can understand her needing a mom. But monsters.
You wanted to be involved. They are the ones who took you out of the picture.
They told people in the beauty pageants and all those places that they went to that I wasn't involved in Rayleigh's life at all. Ever. They would tell some people it's been 2 years since Janice has seen Rayleigh. Or they would tell some people it's been 4 years since Janice has seen Rayleigh. And then they would tell other people after Rayleigh's bio mom gave birth, she wasn't involved in Rayleigh's life at all after that.
So easily disproven and telling all these different stories, but somehow they told them with such conviction that people believed it.
And all these pictures of Rayleigh online, 85% of those to 90% of those are all pictures that I took. And then the other ones are the ones that Megan Maynor sent to me from Julie's camera reel. I don't know if it was Julie or Cherie that was trying to prove that Rayleigh was a happy child, but it only proved that she wasn't even hardly smiling in any of those pictures. Those pictures were a little bit scary because it didn't really look like Rayleigh.
No, she had a forced smile. You could tell when she was not with you.
You could see the pain in her face.
Different smile.
Yes, I have a lot of those pictures, and I can't even bear to look at them. They're all still in my email, and they're pictures with Rayleigh and all 3 surviving children. Mm-hmm. But the pictures of Rayleigh, I see this one picture where I think they're at Summersville Lake or something, and she's sitting off by herself in the sand, and it just shows the back of her head and her alone on the beach. And I thought, how does that prove anything? And the ones with her smiling and so skinny, I did think at one point about them talking about her being depressed. They did yank her away from the person who loved her most in the world. Who knows what all they said about me to her? Mm-hmm. What if she felt rejected? What if she felt unloved? What if all of the beatings and the abuse and feeling trapped? How could you not be sad? I feel sad for her. I know nobody explained it to her. How come Mom can't come this weekend?
Because they made up stories about it too.
Yes, like the worst imaginable.
Mm-hmm.
She knew better. I can't help but think In her heart, she knew.
Oh, yeah.
I always told her, I love you more than the whole world. And she would say, the skies too. Skies too. The heavens too. The heavens too. The sun? Yes, Raye. The moon? Yes, Raye. You're my little love. Okay, Mom.
And you didn't even have to say it. She just knew
She knew.
the way you were with her.
Yeah, you can see it in every picture that I took of her.
You can.
Mhm.
You could see how much love there is there mutually.
Her eyes are so bright
Yes.
in every picture. And her face just glows.
Yep.
I have little cheeks. She went through a little chubby spell there for a little while.
Oh.
Cute. Oh my gosh. It was adorable. I loved it when her hair had just gotten long enough to where I could put like a little ponytail holder in it and a little fountain on the top.
I call it radish hair.
Yeah. Or when she had it on the sides of her hair, or the two little pigtails.
Yes.
She had two little fountains of big little radish hairs. Yeah, that's exactly what it would look like too. She had that strawberry blonde, and it would just gleam, and you see why she was my sunshine.
Yes.
You can see it. Her face. She knew she was sunshine. She knew that.
There's no question that she was a special little girl. Like, there's just no question about that. But also, there's no question that she was born to the right mommy. You were meant to be hers, just like she was meant to be yours.
Thank you. Yes. I feel her with me. She is with me. She is a part of me. And I'm with her. And that's the part of me that's missing. And that's me coming to grips with that. And I've been able to acknowledge that the part of me that's gone, it's okay. It's safe because it's with her.
And she'll be waiting for you.
Raylee showed me love and compassion and empathy. Who I am today is because of Raye. I gotta say this. I think about him and knowing here's Christmas and she's in that bedroom and she can't breathe. She's in there dying and he's not doing nothing. Just like, why? He knew at any moment that I would have grasped her up at any moment. He could have called me at any point, any time, any day, any year. Janice, I don't think she's safe here. Will you come and get her? Janice, I don't think I can do this. Will you come and get her? No question. I would have done it at a pin drop.
But that would have meant you won somehow.
A surrender.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have took a grown-up to have to do that.
Right.
To admit that he was wrong, that he could not do it.
I hate that there are people in the world who enjoy inflicting pain and suffering and mental, physical, all of it. But they exist, and somehow 3 of them lived under the same roof.
I just don't understand how they just got 3 to 15.
There's nothing fair about that.
Because she didn't die by one of their swings.
Yeah, it really wasn't fair, and it wasn't enough. And I disagree respectfully with Mr. Parsons for saying this is what justice looks like, because they never got charged with child abuse when there's so much evidence of it.
Right. But you know what's hard is that Parsons was up against 3 other attorneys.
Yes.
And I don't think that's fair in any way.
No, I don't know why they did that.
It's not what justice looks like. And no, it didn't give me peace of mind. And no.
No, not when you have to go to parole hearings starting 3 months from now.
Right. It really felt like an unfair fight.
Mm-hmm.
It felt so unfair. You have one attorney is fighting for a child and everything that she suffered and went through and was tormented by these people. And this one attorney that's trying to fight with all he's got is fighting up against 3 other. You had one of their attorneys, I think Plants. I think this person was experienced and knew exactly what to do to him. This was probably routine. And then there was another one that was trying to make a name for himself and get a win and was just starting out in his business and he wanted to win.
I do not understand how criminal defense attorneys do what they do. Everyone deserves an attorney, and there's not everyone who's guilty, but the people who represent
I know
these clearly guilty individuals, how do you sleep at night?
I asked Parsons this. this very same question. I said, Mr. Parsons, how do they do this? And how do they sleep at night? And how do they get by? He said, I'm going to tell you how. For the ones that have a conscience, they just try a little less.
I do like that, actually.
I did too. Whenever he said that, I was like, that does make sense. You know, like if I was an attorney and I had to defend someone like them, yeah, I don't think I would be trying very hard.
Time for one last sponsor break.
There's no way that there could be justice in this. There just couldn't be. Stringing them up wouldn't be justice. There's no bringing Raylee back. And actually, with a one-on-one talk with Parsons, he said, Janice, they could get out of this. They could get 3 to 15. They could get life. They could get the death penalty. But really, what is it going to matter to you? Because all in all, at the end of this, there is no bringing her back. You're not going to feel what I think you're hoping to feel.
Right.
And he was right. I didn't. And I don't. And he's right. There's no fixing it.
No.
She could have lived till she was 90. She could have made a difference in this world because she was already wanting to be a teacher like Miss Ciliberti. You could see she was already wanting to be a mother to take care of children. She was already, at the young age she was, wanting to look out for children in her situation.
Yeah.
She was already planning it.
She did make a difference. There's no question about that.
Yes.
Now that people know who she was, what she went through, she has a voice now, thanks to you.
And you. Thank you very much, Lane.
I feel like I almost know her through you. I don't have the privilege of ever meeting her, but I feel like through you, I know her as best I could.
It brings a smile to my face because, you know, I have, every time I've thought of any detail about her, I've told you. It's crazy. I have told you so much.
Yeah.
And the hours of talking about Raylee, you could never fit it all in there. But as long as we got those highlighted aspects, she was strong.
Yeah.
She really was. She made it through that on the weekdays. And on the weekends, she would come to my house and be full spirit, running, laughing, giggling, playing, happy. All of it was there. So even though she had the weeks of hell, she still was able to hold on to that purity and that happiness. She was strong. All the way to the end, she was strong. And she's strong on the other side, pushing her voice through to Delicate Fluharty.
Yes.
To Miss Ciliberti, to you, to me, and to every other soul that she can reach out to touch.
That's what I mean. She is definitely making a difference.
I hope so. And I hope at one point Rayleigh's law can stretch across the country.
It really is common sense.
Yes. And I can't help but surf through my mind of everything I must have done wrong and wishing the things that I could have done to change it.
I know it's easy to second guess yourself way after the fact, but you did so much. We haven't even touched on everything you did in all the episodes because I don't know that we could.
No way. I was nonstop. I wasn't letting up. That's why they went as far as doing what they did whenever they came in and just crashed my whole family. They thought that they were just going to completely destroy my life in that moment.
They just had such a vendetta against you for what? I have no idea.
Loving my child with all I had. And they knew I loved her. God, I loved her. There would be several times they would be like, well, I don't know if we can make it to the meeting spot. It's snowing outside. And be like, that's okay. We got 4-wheel drive. That's how I found out where they lived, was because during the wintertime, they'd come up with the excuse, oh, we can't make it out. No, I can. They did so much to try to prevent her from seeing me and me from seeing her. I just think about all the things that they said to her as to why I wasn't there. And guts me To think that I didn't get to see her for so long before she passed, and thinking in those moments when she was sick and couldn't breathe, her wanting her mommy. I know she did.
Yeah, of course.
And I couldn't be there.
It was not your fault.
People tell me that I shouldn't feel that I failed, and I shouldn't feel this guilt and this grief. But there's no stopping it. And because I was her mom, and I should have found a way. And I wish I would have kidnapped her. I swear I do. Hindsight's 2020.
Right, exactly. You cannot help your child if you're in prison for federal charges of kidnapping, leaving the state. That doesn't make sense.
Right.
I know. It's your first thought is like, I have to do this, but you know how much he's capable of getting away with.
Yeah, he said that he was going to kill both of us. And I actually feel like he did stick to that, because whenever he killed her, it killed me. It gutted me and shattered me and broke me to where I was in shock. It's been 6 years. Feels like yesterday to me. It's hard to move on. As her mom, it's hard to live a normal life knowing that they took something so precious away. I want to be a good wife. I want to be the best mother. But there is just a part of me that's just gone that I don't know if I could get back.
Or if something else grows in its place.
Maybe if I could let something else in. I don't know. Like I said, I've recently been able to find a little bit of peace and clarity knowing that Raylee's life gave 3 other children a normal life. That if Raylee's law is to pass, or even with Raylee's law being brought to awareness, maybe it makes people second guess what they do before they do it. Whenever I told you over the summertime, I told you, Lane, I think I'm getting there. I mean, gosh, we have talked since 2019. Ever since Jeremy sent you the message, thank you for being Raylee's voice. And I sent you a message saying thank you. And you had just started the podcast. And then I just thought, I don't know, I just started messaging you.
It was natural.
You just had an understanding. And with Raylee, I couldn't open up to just anybody. So there was a very select few that I could talk to. And you were one of them. And you have known Raylee's entire story all this time. And out of the respect for me and our family and Raylee, you have held back and waited, for if I'm ready. I just know that it just happened over the summertime. I thought, I wonder if Lane would want to redo Raylee's story now that she's heard my side for the past 5 years.
I've always wanted to redo it. It was my 4th episode because I wanted to tell her story so badly. I was like, early on, I'm doing it. But after learning a few things and gaining different perspectives, I really just wanted to do it because you have to be involved. I wouldn't have done it without you. So I didn't care if we waited 20 years. I did not care. I just wanted you involved in this because there's nothing like the way you love her.
I'm so happy to be part of it because she is part of me. Marty, he was all lies. Being with him was just toxic. It was horrible. And whenever I met Jeremy and his persistence, and we started our relationship on the grounds of trusting each other and spilling out nothing but truth. I mean, I believe that's what made us strong through all of it. I don't know how he made it through this past 6 years with me being as absent-minded. I've tried. I really have. Just with the loss of Raylee and the shock. And then after the shock, the ailments that followed. I have no idea if any other grieving mothers go through that. The broken heart syndrome.
Yours is definitely the worst that I've heard. You've been through an unbelievable amount of pain and I mean, physically after the fact.
Yeah.
You've been through so many physical ailments, it just destroyed your immune system.
Yes.
I don't think I had any idea that it could do that.
I feel like I'm always on antibiotics.
Yeah, I bet.
And with that, I form allergies to them, like the penicillin.
Did you get hives?
Hives and full-on anaphylaxis.
Oh, good. That's helpful.
Yeah, my whole throat closed. I swelled up so bad they couldn't find a vein, so they drilled into my shin.
Oh, whoa.
When I came to, I'm like, oh my gosh, there is an IV in my leg and my jeans have been cut.
Oh, no.
Okay. It's a mess. I've been through some stuff. Since she died, I fell apart.
It affected everything.
Everything, every aspect, every point in my life. It affected where I lived. It affected my marriage. It affected my other children. It affected my mental and physical, and it affected everything.
Yeah.
Everything. It's like it brought it all down on top of me. And, where I was in shock, I didn't even realize what I was doing. Like, my kids need me. My husband needs me. And apparently my body is needing the attention that I'm not giving it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, every aspect.
Finally, to the breaking point in June when I had a nervous breakdown and heart failure, kidney failure, and I had a stroke.
Last year.
Yes. I remember it was after that I told you that I felt a little bit of clarity.
Mm-hmm.
Like, this is where this has put me. This is where Marty wanted me. Broken down till I was just nothing. I reached a moment of clarity being in the hospital in June after that. And then I could feel like something inside of me, like a peak of my old self saying, snap out of it. Come on, get up, break through. You can do this. And I don't know if it was my sunshine coming through, like, Mom, you got to call an end to the grieving. It's not your fault, and you have to keep moving.
Yeah.
And I felt myself step up for my 3 younger children. And I felt myself get stronger through the summer. And since the stroke and the heart failure and all that happening in June, ever since I felt like I felt as a mother, as a wife, I felt like I felt every aspect of my life. And it felt like everything broke down at that point. And I felt like I had to build it back up. And where the strength came from, I don't know. It really came in a very strong wave. And I'm happy to say, in this past year, I have only been in the hospital the time with the stroke, and I had to go another time for 3 days. But after Raylee died, well, let's go back to 2023. I was in the hospital more than 10 times and the ICU a lot. And I had a port implant in my chest so that I could receive treatments at home. I had blood transfusions. Just, it destroyed every aspect of my life. So he probably would have wanted that. And I am very happy to say that I have put everything back the way it needs to be.
That's awesome.
And I do want to speak and be Raylee's voice. And I do want her story out there.
She deserves that, and so do you.
Yes. Our conversation has been alleviating
Oh, good.
a little bit better. Just knowing it's out there.
Thank you all for listening to this lengthy 4-part series. I know it was a lot to get through. It's been an especially tough series of episodes for me, too. I first wrote about Raylee over 5 years ago, and she's been in my heart ever since. I've talked with Janice so much that, like I told her, I feel like I know Raylee through her, and it's impossible not to take every detail to heart. Everything about Raylee's story is infuriating, heartbreaking, and unfair, including the fact that because of the killer's paltry 3 to 15-year sentences, Janice has to prepare to attend parole hearings this year. Marty Lee Browning Jr. is scheduled for his first parole hearing on May 26, 2025. His projected release date is listed on the West Virginia Department of Corrections website as November 24, 2029, although I hope the parole board, after learning about Raylee's story, decides he needs to spend every minute of his maximum sentence behind bars. The same sentiment applies to both Julie Browning and Cherie Tichenal, who are both scheduled for parole hearings on June 9th of this year. Their projected release date shows as December 8, 2029. I've promised Janice that someday we will meet in person. I will give her the biggest hug in human history, and I'd love to pay my respects to Raylee at Janice's family cemetery. Rest well, Raylee Jolynn Browning. Keep shining your beautiful light over your mama and your family. Don't forget to check out Magic Mind and use my discount code. I'll include the link in the show notes. Visit magicmind.com/lane20 and use discount code LANE20. That's it for this episode. Join me next time for another child's story. If you like the show, please follow or subscribe to Suffer the Little Children on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, YouTube, Spotify, Spreaker, Pandora, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, or your favorite podcast listening app. And please leave me a 5-star rating and a positive review on your favorite podcast platform. Visit the website at sufferthelittlechildrenpod.com. You can support the show by visiting patreon.com/stlcpod, where you can become a patron for rewards ranging from a shout-out by name on the show to exclusive gifts. You can also support the show at ko-fi.com/stlcpod. Follow the podcast on Facebook and Instagram at Suffer the Little Children Pod and on TikTok at STLCpod. View photos related to today's episode on Facebook. This podcast is researched, written, hosted, edited, and produced by Lane. Intro theme music is by Dream Note Music, and all music for the show is licensed from audiojungle.net. For more information about preventing or reporting child abuse, visit childhelp.org or call your area's child abuse hotline. And remember, if you see something, say something.